Thank you so much, Charlotte. It's great to meet you in real life rather than over a Zoom call, which
Great to be here.
it's so much better, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for coming here today. We are going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about what is the legendary Bloom and Wild force of nature and force of innovation. Have broken a lot of rules in the last 10 years and keep on continuing to do so, if my understanding is correct. Charlotte, you have developed a challenger spirit that is very much at the heart of your brand. What I'd really love to understand, and I'm sure the audience would too, is how do you continuously innovate? It's become kind of like it's part of your DNA. So maybe you can just talk us through that journey.
Yeah, well, I think when we started 10 years ago now, there were just no loved brands in this space. So Google was like everyone's favorite flower brand, and you just hope that you find someone random who can deliver you this really important emotional connection with somebody that you're trying to send. And so Aaron, who's our co-founder and CEO, he was himself really frustrated with it. He was trying to send somebody flowers, he couldn't do it easily, couldn't find any he liked. He just thought, this is just a really rubbish experience. And so actually, innovation doesn't always have to be, I could talk about the letterbox innovation in a sec, but it doesn't always have to be something big and shiny. Actually, where we started was just obsess about the customer experience. So make a really good UX on your site and your app. Make it possible to order those flowers in 10 seconds. Make the design of the flowers actually nice, that people want to send, that are like in keeping with what you would have in your own home. And put the service around that so that people have a great experience. So both the sender, who knows that it will arrive when we've said it's going to arrive, but also for the recipient, that they have an amazing experience with the unboxing. So we obsess about every little detail, about the texture of the ribbon, the sticker that says "Shh, your flowers are sleeping," the care cards that give you a guide of how to wake your flowers up and have a really great experience. And so all of that, really, actually, the first innovation was around just that obsession with customer experience, and of course the letterbox innovation, which didn't exist before. So that was something that we pioneered and came from actually a supply chain insight. So sometimes your like really powerful customer innovation can come from quite a boring place, which was that actually flowers travel the world flat packed. And so Aaron was like, well, hang on a minute, why do we make it more difficult to send them to people? Why don't we do that? And what was interesting there is that just actually changed behavior. So when you could send flowers through the letterbox, it didn't have to be this big, flashy, showy gesture anymore. And so people were sending them for what we call just because occasions a lot more, and lots more women sending to other women. So our kind of demographic and the reasons why people send our flowers are quite different from what that would have looked like a decade or two ago, where it was maybe big, flashy, romantic gestures. So I think that innovation, starting with something which was, well, would this be possible? Would this make this easier and better for customers? Actually then seeing, sort of catapulting a whole change in behavior is a really interesting place where we started.
Do you think that Bloom and Wild were instrumental in encouraging those different behaviors?
Yeah, I think so, because I think it was so surprising for people to receive these flowers through the letterbox. And actually, still today, about 50% of our new customers come from what we call viral referral channels. So either they've received flowers themselves and then they've thought, well, that was great, I'm going to send them to somebody else, or they've been recommended by a friend or whatever. So I do think that the experience and that obsession with making this unusual experience a really great one, and with lots of memorable, I like to say, sort of sticky touches throughout that, I think really did then make them think, oh, well, actually, yes, I've got somebody I could send it to, and because it's an emotional category as well, we're very lucky in that. So when you receive a gift, you're in an emotional space. When you send a gift, you're in an emotional space. And so people are much more likely to build memory structures around that. So if you can give them a good experience at that time, then they're much more likely to think, okay, yeah, I'm going to go on and use that myself.
In terms of the actual brand evolution, I think you've been with Bloom and Wild for 6 years, is that right?
Only 3.5.
Only 3.5, sorry. Only 3.5. What have been the significant changes that you have seen and been part of in this last just evolution of the brand?
So I think, we didn't really do any big above-the-line advertising at the beginning, and we grew, as I say, through these sort of viral channels, really, through obsessing with customer experience. Of course, we had digital marketing, but unlike some of the D2C brands that launched at a similar sort of time in that 2003 moment where there was a lot going on, we weren't ever sort of wholly reliant on Facebook ads, for example. So by the time I came in, which was January 2020, so things panned out a little bit differently from what I thought. But by the time I came in January 2020, really what I was tasked with doing was like, okay, who are we? And all of the ingredients were there, but we just never stitched them together into a brand positioning and a brand platform that people could, get behind and that was very, very clear. So I had a gift of a job, I think, in that the culture of the company was amazing. The sort of customer experience was great. We had all these amazing advocates. I've never joined a company where we have a channel on our Slack called Customer Love, and our customer delight team send little messages that are coming from our customers, and they are so heartfelt to us as a team, saying thank you so much for doing this. My mum was absolutely delighted, and she's broken her hip, and I'm so worried about her. And they share all of this with us. So there's all this stuff here, and really all I needed to do was try and find a way to stitch it together and surface it. And so with our agency partner, The Or, we developed the brand platform of Care Wildly, which has the beauty of really tapping into what's going on here. It's not about the flowers. It's about all the care that's sent with them, but also gives us that stretch into the future so that we're not just talking about blooming and all of that. It's very deliberate that we've gone with the wildly bit of the brand name because it gives us that stretch into the future.
I mean, you're very unusual in some respects because you have these incredible NPS ratings. I think it's 80, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but we are also in a world where the landscape for the consumer is significantly different to even how it was 12 months ago.
Yeah.
So how are you coping, and what are you doing with regard to the issues of sustainability, but also the cost of living crisis? I mean, have you been innovating through? Please tell us about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with sustainability, to start there, clearly everybody is much more concerned and willing to ask much more tricky questions about this than they ever were. And that goes for our team as well. So actually internally, we have a big culture of interrogation on this stuff. So we hired a head of sustainability a couple of years back, and we are, we're not just carbon neutral. Yes, we are carbon neutral, but so should everybody be. We have a clear net zero plan, and we've committed to halve our emissions by 2030. And when your product is a natural product that is grown in the ground, that's quite tricky. So it's a really big commitment from us. So we've had to think, well, how the hell are we going to do that in reality? So we've got some exciting things that we're working on, which are quite geeky and techie and data related, which is we're in the process of trying to map the carbon footprint of every single stem that goes into our bouquets. And then what we are able to do with that is say, okay, well, that bouquet has a carbon footprint of X. We've set ourselves a commitment of reducing that by 7% every year, and that's how we're going to get to the 2030 halving target. And so then we can give to our designers, our floral designers, not just, okay, you've got this much money to spend on this bouquet, but actually, and you've got this much carbon that you can put into it. And that triggers a whole series of decisions with our buying, which is like, well, actually, okay, do we buy that stem then in the Netherlands, where it's grown in a heated greenhouse, or can we get it from Spain? All of those sorts of decisions, and we can work with our growers as well and say, look, we're actually not going to buy that stem from you because the carbon footprint of it is too high. What can you do? How can we help? So that's a sort of longer term piece. As I say, we're not ready to roll it out yet, and we're testing on a small scale, but I think it's a really exciting, and I don't think anybody else is thinking about it in those terms. And then, of course, we're doing some smaller things like we're just launching our first organic bouquet, which might sound quite simple. It's actually really hard. The percentage of organic flowers that are grown in this country is very, very small. So we've searched out a farm in Wales, and we're launching with them, I think this week, next week. And so there are things like that where we're partnering with Rewilding Britain to support them through the sales of this organic bouquet. So there's some stuff which is immediately customer-facing now, but like any innovation, there's a lot of stuff which is going to it's going to be a multi-year process to get there. So that's on the sort of sustainability front. You asked me about cost of living. I think, the thing about cost of living is it's value, and what is value to you? And that sort of means lots of different things to different people. So I don't think it's just a case of having cheap products, although we have introduced some entry-level products. But we did a big piece of work this time last year to really understand, well, how do our customers perceive value? So, and we had some really interesting things come out of that, like, for example, soft pink is more valuable to a UK customer base than yellow in a bouquet. So we can then make sure that we're actually designing our bouquets and pricing them in a way that reflects what people feel is valuable. And so we've really changed a lot of our pricing architecture from that point of view. And then we've done the more obvious things, like I gave my team, I think, about 4 weeks last autumn to launch a product under £20. And so we have now a little posy product called the Little Blooms, which retails at £19. And it's really good for those like smaller occasions, or you want to send something, but you just don't want to spend a lot. So that is another way that we've kind of pulled those things together. But I think really understanding what your customers value, we've actually seen some increasing spend in sort of £40 plus, and I think that's because we're doing really impactful partnerships with brands like Liberty, where people then, they understand the value that we're trying to get, that we're giving them there, and so they think, yeah, okay, I will spend. So I think across the spectrum, it's really understanding how you deliver value to people.
Yeah, totally. That's really, really important, because value is very much part of your brand and your brand values. So what's next? You've got this incredible loyal customer base, you've got advocacy amongst your consumers. Where do you take the brand?
Yeah. So I don't know, how many of you have sent flowers to somebody in the last year? Yeah, quite a lot. How many of you done it twice? 3 times? 4 times? Yeah, exactly. So it's something that everybody does once or twice a year, but actually I'm sure you've bought or sent gifts a lot more frequently than that. So we think there's a big opportunity for us to kind of harness the loyal customer base that we have. So about 80% of our orders are from repeat buyers, and just show up for them and be more useful for them in more situations. So for more gifting occasions, for more recipients. And the way that we think we can do that is by expanding into new categories. So since about last September, we've been testing that. But I think the thing that was really important was for us to stop and think, well, why do people feel confident to send a gift with us? And therefore, what do we need to hold true about the brand experience as we expand away from flowers and plants and those things that are sort of obviously connected with flowers? So there were a few things that came out on our research, which is, value, as you say, in terms of quality, and really trusting us to deliver, the unboxing, all of that people, they know it's going to be a great experience. Also the uniqueness of our range. So unique range is one of our strongest brand perceptions. So we knew we couldn't just put any old products on the site. And then the ease. So, how easy it is to shop, but also how easy it is to get anything rectified if anything goes wrong. So people absolutely love our customer service. So we really took those principles and are now translating that into new categories, and we've had to think about how do we select brands and finding brands with similar kind of share our values, and can really build a range that people feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense for Bloom & Wild and I trust them to deliver this. But as I said, because it's an emotional space, I really think that we can help by being more than just a flower gifting brand, and you can go on our app, and I did it this morning, I sent somebody some brownies in about 30 seconds flat. And if we can be with you on that journey in more places, there's obviously a big opportunity for us in terms of frequency, but it's also really useful to our customers.
Thank you so much. That's fascinating. I'm going to ask if you'll take some questions.
Yeah, sure.
So who'd like to ask Charlotte a question? There we are. Got a question over here.
Hi, I'm Emily. I just wondered, I think when Bloom & Wild launched, you were quite focused on subscription at the time and people buying flowers for themselves. And I wondered if you're still going after that market, what you're doing in that space, or if it's purely gifting.
Yeah, so yes, it did launch initially as a subscription brand, you're right, back at the very beginning. But what we saw was that people were subscribing and then cancelling because really what they wanted to do was just send one. And so, the team back then, when there were, probably 5 or 10 people, were like, oh, we're doing the wrong thing. We're not doing what people want. So we do have a subscriptions business, and it's definitely a valuable revenue stream, but actually if you think about the size of the relative markets, the number of people who are able and willing to spend 25 quid a month on flowers in their home, especially now, is much, much smaller than the gifting market, whereby you've got multiple recipients, multiple occasions per year. So for us, gifting is the main focus. We still, have a very valuable subscription base, and we want to make sure that those customers are having a great experience, but it's not our main focus.
How are you choosing the partners that you're working with now in terms of the gifting opportunity in the app?
So we've kind of taken an approach where we can see that people really value us bringing sort of small makers to them. So Cutter and Squidge, which is a sort of cake brand, is doing really, really well. And they have that same sort of curated range. They think very thoughtfully about their products. And of course, we ask a lot of questions about people's sustainability credentials and all of those kind of things. So there's brands like Cutter and Squidge, there's brands like Mayan Candles are doing very well as well. And then we also try and give people some brands that they already know and trust. So like Neom, for example. And that's sort of a balance that we're still learning what the balance needs to be. But it seems that actually if we can give people some brands which they might not be super familiar with, but have that same sort of ethos that we have about doing things a little bit differently, but really obsessing about the quality, that is doing really, really well.
Fantastic. Any more questions from the audience? Looks like you've covered everything.
Oh, there's one over there and one over here.
Thank you.
It sounds like you innovate by really understanding your customer and what they want and think and feel. So how do you go about that research and validate it to ensure that you have the confidence to change your product line? Yeah.
So we have a very small research team, actually, in my team. So there's only 3 of them. But we are sort of prolific surveyors, I would say. And anytime we want to do something, we can very quickly and easily go out to our base or to a more representative base. But it's interesting, I was listening to Alessandra's talk from Tesco earlier, and she talked a bit about how, you can try and prove the business case for everything to the nth degree, but also sometimes you just have to be like, we think this is what feels right. So we do ask our customers kind of what things would you send from us? Which kinds of products are you interested in Bloom & Wild selling? But I don't stick to that rigidly with the team. Something came out the other day about photo frames, and we sat there and were like, yeah, but isn't it really weird to send somebody an empty photo frame in the post? So we put that bit of insight into the bin, actually, and they're doing something else. So I think you have to just have that balance of taking the insight and then a little bit of common sense and instinctive feel about what's right for your brand and your customers. What I would say is that on the gifting journey, we are very focused on one particular segment. So we did market segmentation, 18 months ago, and we're not trying to compete in the gifts that you would give somebody in person space. And that's very clarifying for the team. So we call it Care From Afar, the segment that we're focused on. So these are gifts that are bought online and delivered directly to the recipient. So that keeps us focused on what are the kinds of categories that are going to be interesting then. So it's not like clothing and jewelry, but it is things like freshly baked goods and candles and things like that. So I think there's big picture stuff, and then there's more granular stuff, and sometimes we get great ideas from our customers like, oh, we wouldn't have thought of that brand, let's go and speak to them. But equally a healthy dose of, does this make sense?
Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. Best wishes for the rest of 2023, and thank you very much for spending your time with us this morning and sharing your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Charlotte.